I think when we take a look at Drozer, one of the areas where it really shines is content provider exploitation. It makes content provider exploits so easy to actually do on an application and so easy to scan for automatically. Let's talk a bit about it. For any sort of application, we can run app.provider.info, and we can run this against the application package to get information about content providers in it. So our content providers were in this common example Drozer demo that we looked at earlier. And when we look at this, we'll see the one that we were working with in our previous video where we were doing this manually, this database provider, content provider, right? And it just shows some general information about it, what sort of permissions are required, information about the content provider itself. And we can actually get a bit more granular, and we can run this scanner.provider.find URIs. It will actually show us the URIs associated with not only this content provider, but any other ones that may exist in the application. We'll see that there's 4 total that are available. 2 of them were able to get a response, which means that when Drozer sent requests to this, it got back a response of some sort. And then there's 2 of them that gave no sort of response. They look like Android operating system based ones, so they may not give us a response. They may require some special permissions or something like that. This makes it really easy to find these URIs. Sometimes we can find them in the manifest. Sometimes they're buried somewhere in the application. So being able to pull them out like this is really a nice benefit to have. Now, when we find content provider-based URIs and when they're exported, our general question is going to be, does a SQL injection exist, or is there some sort of way to compromise these, right? So there's a few different tools that Drozer is going to give us to be able to try this out. The very first thing that we could do is we can just run a query like normal using app.provider.query. All this is going to do is it's just going to send a query to the content provider, and the main idea of this is to help you see what sort of content you would generally get from it by default. I realized I forgot to put the actual name of the content provider. There we go. And we can see here that it just gives us the general output, which we saw in our previous video on content providers as well. It allows us to see settings and a toggle for those settings. Now our goal is to get a SQL injection here. So from this point in the manual process, what we did was we were taking a look at projections. We were trying to think through, okay, how do we actually make a projection-based vulnerability happen here? And then we were trying to do something to get all the different tables that existed inside of the content provider. And, it was a fair bit of work, right? So instead of doing that, what we could do is just say run scanner.provider.injection, right? -a com.example.drozer.demo.database-provider. And generally, in some cases, you may get this sort of error here. Generally, what that means is that we've just typed in the wrong package name, or we've ended up with some sort of error. Oh, in this case, I just didn't put the content, I'm pretty sure is my problem. Yeah, there we go. And you'll see here that when I do this, it finds an injection in the projection and an injection in the selection. So it actually tells us that there was an injection that was found inside of this content provider. So not only can Drozer tell us all the URIs, it can actually find injections automatically. And then the question is, well, how do we know that it actually found an injection? Well, we can run scanner.provider.sql tables. We can run that again on our Drozer demo. And what you'll see here is it actually gives us all of the SQL tables. Remember, we got this last time by doing a projection injection, and we did it by selecting on SQLite master. Drozer does a very similar process, but it does it automatically for us. We don't actually have to do the injections ourselves. We now have all of the tables that exist inside of the database. We know which content providers have a SQL injection inside of them. And at this point, we could do whatever we want, right? I know that there's an injection in the projection and in the selection. So from this point, what I can do is I can try to query one of these different tables using that kind of injection. So we would use the same sort of thing that we saw in the previous video where we do that content query. And then, if there's an injection in the projection, we would say projection star from users like this, right? Since we already know the name of the table, we don't need to get this. We could just do this simple projection-based query. We can leak all the data out of that table. So you can see that Drozer really simplifies content provider-based exploitation. I no longer have to, jump around trying to find all these different URIs and this type of idea. We're able to find this in a nice, simple fashion. We're able to automate all of this process, and there's no sorts of problems with this type of thing. So thanks so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.